Everyone see the agenda? Great, thanks.
Jenna, how about playing some music? Or Jeff, play some music before we start. It's so quiet and boring.
It's 6:30, Chris. We have to start.
Oh, it's time to start. There you are.
There I am. Here I am.
5 minutes too late, Chris.
Would you have done it?
Okay.
Oh, heck yeah.
Good
That's what I
morning.
need to know.
Good evening, everybody. We are at the April 14th Planning and Zoning, April 14th, 2021 Planning and Zoning Committee meeting. May I have a roll call, please?
Jenna here.
Jeff here.
Chris here.
Lynn here. And
Elliot here.
Elliot's here, and Todd Priest will not be attending tonight. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
Pledge allegiance to the flag of
flag
the United
of the
States of America,
and to the
to the
republic
republic for which it stands,
one
one
nation,
Nation
under
under
God,
God.
indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
all. Thank you. Okay. Has everybody had time to read the agenda?
Yes.
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 Madison, is there anything to be pulled or added?
Yes, ma'am. I apologize, this was my mistake. That we do need to swear the recently appointed planning commissioners in, which our mayor, John Weiderman, has thankfully made himself available for this meeting. So that does need to be added to the agenda.
Okay. And with that, may somebody make a motion to accept the agenda, please?
I make a motion to accept the agenda with the change as presented by Madison.
Second, please.
I'll second.
Motion by Jenna, second by Chris, all in favor?
Aye.
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 How about the minutes? Has everybody read the minutes of March 24th?
Yes.
And are there any corrections or exchanges or differences?
No.
No? May I have a motion to accept the minutes of March 24th, please?
Madam Chair,
Yes,
I apologize for interrupting. There were a couple typos that I caught in further review, and so they will be amended to what has been put in the packet. At the top, I changed it to official minutes, and then further on, I changed, I think, property to parking.
thank you, Madison. So with those two corrections,
I make a motion to approve the minutes from March 24th with Madison's corrections.
may I have a second?
Second.
Motion by Jeff, second by Jenna. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Public comments on items which are not on tonight's agenda. If anybody has anything, will you please raise your hand? There are none, Madison.
I see no raised hands in the audience for items that are not on tonight's agenda.
Thank you. So we will close public comments. And the next will be, I assume, the swearing in of the commissioners.
I believe that's correct.
All right. Well, since, we'll have the important role of swearing everybody in before the appointment of the planning chair. I suppose if y'all don't mind, I guess we'll just go down individually how I have it in front of me. So Lynn, would you like to go first? All right. Well, Lynn, if you don't mind, go ahead and raise your right hand.
I have a blue
Please.
hand, John.
All right. And go ahead and repeat after me. I, Lynn Teach, do solemnly swear
I, Lynn Teach, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States,
the Constitution and the laws of the state of Colorado,
the Constitution and the laws of the state of Colorado,
and the ordinances of the town of Minturn,
the ordinances of the town of Minturn,
and that I will faithfully perform all the duties
that I will faithfully perform all the duties
of the office of Minturn Planning Commissioner upon which I'm about to enter.
of the office of Minturn Planning Commissioner, of which I am about to enter.
Congratulations.
Thanks, John.
All right. Thank you, Lynn. All right. Next, we have Jenna Skinner.
All right.
All right, Jenna, go ahead and raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Jenna Skinner, do solemnly swear
I, Jenna Skinner, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States,
the Constitution and the laws of the state of Colorado,
the Constitution and the laws of the state of Colorado,
and the ordinances of the town of Minturn,
and the ordinances of the town of Minturn,
and that I will faithfully perform the duties
that I will faithfully perform the duties
of the office of Minturn Planning Commissioner upon which I am about to enter.
of the office of Minturn Planning Commissioner, which I am about to enter.
All right. Congratulations, Jenna. Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
All right. And next, I have got Mr. Elliot Hovey. Elliot, you there?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Good.
All right. Raise your right hand and please repeat after me. I, Elliot Hovey, do solemnly swear
I, Elliot Hovey, do solemnly swear
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States,
that I will support the Constitution and the laws of the United States,
the Constitution and the laws of the state of Colorado,
the Constitution and the laws of the state of Colorado,
and the ordinances of the town of Minturn,
and the ordinances of the town of Minturn,
and that I will faithfully perform all of the duties
that I will faithfully perform all of the duties
of the office of Minturn Planning Commissioner upon which I'm about to enter.
on the office of the Minturn Planning Commissioner, of which I'm about to enter.
All right. Thank you, Elliot. Congratulations.
Thank you.
All right. Well, I think I've done my duty here. So thank you, everybody, for all your participation. Much appreciated.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank
Mayor.
you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Best of luck. Not that you need it.
Next is the appointment of the planning chair.
I'd like to make a motion to have Lynn remain as our chair.
May I have a second to the motion?
I'll
I will
second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you very much. I
You're
appreciate
welcome.
it.
Thank
Okay,
you.
so once again, I would like to say good evening and thank you all for joining us tonight. Next on this evening's agenda is a review for the Minturn North Planned Unit Development.
Madam Chair,
Yes?
sorry for interrupting. I think Planning Commission comments.
Oh, I'm
just,
sorry.
I'm dying
Is
to
there
hear what
anybody on the
you all
Planning
have to
Commission
say.
who would like comments?
I wanted to welcome Elliot. Elliot, thanks for helping us out.
No problem. Happy to be here. But I do have to I am unfortunately, well, first of all, it's an honor to be appointed and serve, Minturn's Planning Commission, but, for the sake of transparency for myself, but, more importantly, the integrity of the commission, I'm going to have to recuse myself from this project due to possible conflicts of interest. So I wanted to make sure that that was brought out. But I do have faith in you guys and the people of the town to work together and, do the right thing for the future of Minturn. But I wanted to make sure that that was brought up before we got any further into the topic.
Thank you, Elliot.
Certainly.
Anybody else? No? Okay. So we will close Planning Commission comments and return to the review for the Minturn North Plan Unit Development. My name is Lynn Teach and I will be tonight's chair. Scott Hahn is with us, the Minturn Planning Director, and he will inform us as to what will be covered in tonight's meeting and start the review process going. Greg Sparhawk will be with us. He is representing the Minturn North Planned Unit Development. The Planning and Zoning Commission will then give their thoughts, concerns, and questions. And due to the amount of info tonight, we will not be opening to public comment tonight. We will open to public comment at a later date. And with that, I'll turn it over to Scott.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Can everyone see this PowerPoint presentation that I've brought up?
Yes.
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, step one. I guess my job's done here tonight.
Hey,
Just press
have a good
play.
night.
Oh, boy.
Tip your servers.
So this is the first hearing of the review of the preliminary development plan for the Minturn North PUD. And I am going to do my best to go through this presentation, and really what this is set up to do is introduce the application and introduce the project teams, town staff, do a quick overview of what a planned unit development is, or a PUD, and look at the criteria and conformance standards that you should be focused on as planning commission members. Look at outstanding issues and next steps in the process. Then the applicant will have a chance to present some of his plans and walk you through some of the site plans, I think. And then we'll have planning commission question and answers. So this is going to be a lot of text, and I apologize ahead of time, but it's really important that everyone reviewing this file on behalf of the Planning Commission and everyone in the public understand everything that's gone into just getting to this hearing, and all of the criteria that we're charged with essentially making positive findings. So in order to make a recommendation for approval of an application like this, a land use file, you're acting as essentially judges. It's a quasi-judicial hearing. So I know Richard Peterson Creamer is joining us tonight, our assistant town attorney. Maybe I'll steal some of his thunder. You should be focused on the materials that are presented to you in the staff packets, the staff report, the materials from the application. You should be focused and considering testimony that you hear during the hearing, but nothing else really. Talking with neighbors on the street corner, in the post office, things like that. is not a good idea. So keep that in mind as we work through this process. And without further ado, I'll launch into this, because I think we're looking at kind of a long night. So as you mentioned, Madam Chair, the applicant is Minturn Crossing LLC. Jim Comerford is Minturn Crossing LLC, as well as Greg Sparhawk, who will be and has been representing the project, working with staff for months and months to get to this point. Real quickly, the town staff, we are led by Michelle Mateer, the town manager, Mike Sawyer and Richard Peterson Creamer from Carp New Hanlon. They're the town attorney and assistant town attorney. They have been integral to our review and our all of our dealings, meetings with consultants and with the applicant. Jeff Spinell is the town engineer, Intermountain Engineering. I am Scott Hunt, I'm the planning director. I'm a consultant as well, or a consulting planning director. Arnold Martinez, Public Works Supervisor, has weighed in on the plans at the conceptual stage and now with preliminary plan. And Madison Harris, she may be last on this list, but she has been absolutely a workhorse in helping us receive, organize, and distribute all of the thousands of pages of information, studies, plans, everything, again, that's gone into our review so far. And really, going through this stuff with a fine-tooth comb, understanding what's been presented and whether or not the applicant has addressed any concerns that have come up along the way. So I want to recognize Madison. Other consultants that have helped us in this review: Jim Mann from Ellers Public Finance Advisor, Megan Winokur, Holland and Hart, and Christy Radabaugh, Martin and Wood Water Consultants. Megan and Christy have been integral on some of the water issues. I know you know them. They've certainly been involved with most of the town's water capital improvements planning and all of those considerations. Eric Peterson and Dan Coakley from SGM in Glenwood, they have helped on the engineering review side of things, and as well as some of the environmental assessment review, wildlife impact review. And then Ellie Carroll from Veracity. Ellie has aided the town and worked with Greg Sparhawk and Eagle County Eco Trails to focus on the regional trail segment that is proposed as part of this development. Some of the referral agents, part of our process, and I'll get into this in a minute, but with any PUD like this, any large land use proposal, it is not only incumbent upon the town, but it's also written into the code that we are required to send this application out to public agencies and nonprofit or quasi-public agencies. So this list represents I don't think everyone that we sent to, but everyone we received comments from: Colorado Division of Transportation, Parks and Wildlife, Eagle River Water and Sanitation District, Eagle County, and that includes the Planning Department, Environmental Health Department, Eco Trails, Eagle County School District, Xcel Energy, Eagle River Watershed Council provided some pretty illustrious comments, some great stuff that I think we should all consider for this development and any other future development. Eagle River Fire Protection District, Colorado Geologic Survey, and the United States Forest Service. So as I mentioned, this is a planned unit development. There's a section of the code, the Minturn Municipal Code. It's Chapter 16, Article 15, PUD Overlay Zone District, where all of these regulations and standards live and the processes that we're going to follow. So the first step in that is the conceptual development plan review, and that literally is just a concept. So if we think back to last February and March when Jim and Greg and their team came through a conceptual review. It actually started, I think, in December of 19, and we wound up in the hearing rooms in February and March. And it was, really just to look at a high level of what was contemplated from the standpoint of the layout of streets and sidewalks and lots, the general range or density of the number of lots, the type of housing units proposed or any other uses. And we did that in March. And then the next step after conceptual development plan, after the kind of sketchy, high level review, is it a good idea? Is it not a good idea? Does it conform to the town's vision? Does it conform to the town's community plan? Does it generally look like it can meet the standards for development? And we agreed at that time that it did. And we sent the applicant forward to the planning, or the preliminary plan for PUD stage. And the preliminary plan stage really is where the rubber meets the road. That's where the applicant is asked to spend real money developing detailed plans and engineering solutions for things like grading and drainage, the layout and design of roads, water, sewer, sidewalks, parks. Everything that goes into the actual land plan is what we should be evaluating at preliminary plan. This is the stage where, if approved, the applicant would essentially be granted vested rights. So it's a big deal, and there's a lot that goes into it, and there's a lot of go between and back and forth between the applicant and the staff and the consultants. And Greg has been a very busy guy for months, addressing comments from not only staff and consultants, but from those referral agents that I mentioned. So that's where we are. It has taken a year to get to this point. And I'll explain a little bit about the chronology of that here in a second. The next stage, the last stage in this process, if we project forward, if there were to be an approval of this preliminary plan, it would give the applicant and the staff the green light to start working on really the minutia. If there's a preliminary plat, a subdivision plat that we're going to look at this stage as well, that plat will get finalized and get more details on that plat, more detailed engineering and cost estimates that would go into what's called a subdivision improvements agreement. So that's where we, as a staff, as a town, understand everything that goes into the public improvements, and we agree on the design of those public improvements as a kind of a final level detail, and the cost estimates for those, who's paying for what, when those things are going to be constructed, how they're going to be guaranteed financially. So, preliminary plan is the heavy lifting stage. Final plan should be more than perfunctory, but it should be more technical in nature and really dialing in the details. So as I mentioned, this process at conceptual level started a year ago. Ended a year ago, and then in March of 2020, the applicant turned around and submitted their initial submittal for preliminary plan for development. And at that time, the application was not complete. And we did a completeness review in April, sent them a letter and said, here's all the things that we need in order to deem your application complete. We received a resubmittal in October of 2020. Proceeded to review that and provide another round of completeness comments in November of 2020. We agreed in December, January to allow the applicant to move forward to the referral stage. So, putting the application on the website so everybody in the world could see it, sending it to referral agents so we could start getting their comments. That started in January. And in the interim period, we've had multiple meetings and a lot of go between the staff and the applicant to try to make sure that we're addressing a myriad of concerns and issues that have come up during the referral period. And those referral comments are from staff as well. So Intermountain Engineering, Jeff Spinell, the town engineer, the planning department, the town attorney's office. So it's been a lot of work over the last, I'd say 2.5, 3 months. And we are here today, April 14th, to get started on hearing number 1. Does anybody have any questions so far? Okay. Just a quick vicinity map. You can see the area shaded in the center of the screen. That is the parcel that we are looking at. This is Union Pacific Railroad property, and the applicant is proposing to develop that property. It is just about 19 acres. It is bordered on the east by the Taylor Avenue residential neighborhood and Taylor Avenue itself. To the south is, to the west is Minturn Road. And then to the north, you see Minturn Road proceeding out of town. This is the Minturn Townhomes down here to the south. This is Old Town and Highway 24. I am not going to go into a lot of detail on the plans. I'm going to let Greg Sparhawk walk you through his land plan. But I did want to just kind of give a brief overview of the proposal. So this is located within the Game Creek character area, and it's located in what's called the PUD holding zone. And that was specific to these areas of the Union Pacific Railroad property that were essentially, the town code says these are no longer appropriate for industrial uses. In the future, anything that is proposed there needs to come through either a special use permit process or conditional use process or a plan unit development process. So that's the process that we're in right now. Again, it's about 19 acres. What's being proposed is a mix of about 95 lots, anything from cottage lots, 2,500 square feet, up to multifamily lots, which are larger, that would accommodate the construction of 3 different complexes of multifamily. All told, it's 116 units, with the potential, whether a lot owner developed a duplex on some of those lots, or whether they elected to develop an accessory dwelling unit or apartment, say over a garage. There are certain lots that allow for that. So the maximum density that could be built out, or the maximum number of dwelling units, is 184. And those include market rate housing units, and also their housing plan, which I'm sure Greg will talk about, proposes up to 21% of those lots or units to be deed restricted for locals only. It's worth noting that this proposal was applied for before the town adopted its housing ordinance, which would have required a certain mitigation, a certain number of units to be deed restricted for locals only, a certain number of units to be deed restricted and price capped. The applicant is voluntarily proposing this program, so I think that's important. They're also proposing significant open space along Game Creek and park areas within the development itself, and trail systems, public road dedications, and new infrastructure, as well as off-site improvements. I didn't mention that. So real briefly, I'm sorry about this, but I'm going to go through these things just so we're on the record and everyone understands what we're doing. The purpose of the Plan Unit Development Overlay Zone District is to allow for flexibility for landowners to creatively plan for the overall development of their land and to achieve the purpose and objectives of this code and the community plan. An applicant for PUD must demonstrate that departure from existing ordinances or standards that the town has in its code is warranted, and that the proposed PUD is significantly contributes to the following. So, as we look at this, as Greg crafted this PUD and drafted all the documents that would control development in the PUD, these are the things that we keep in mind. So the PUD must be consistent with the community plan and the character of the town, and it must provide for new technology and promote innovative and efficient land use patterns, permit the integration of land uses and contribute to trails and pedestrian circulation, preserve valued environments and natural resources and achieve a more desirable environment, maintain or improve air and water quality, provide for a wide range of housing opportunities, improve the overall design character and quality of new development, permit the integration rather than separation of uses so that necessary facilities are conveniently located in relation to each other, establish land use patterns that promote and expand opportunities for public transportation and trails, for safe, efficient, compact streets and utility networks that lower development and maintenance costs and conserve energy. Also to preserve valued environmental, historic, or mineral resources, lands, and avoid development in hazard areas, maintain and enhance surface and groundwater quality and quantity, provide applicants the opportunity to contribute to the town's multi-use trail system and to provide and maintain access to public lands and rivers, establish incentives for applicants to encourage the provision of long-term affordable housing, and to be consistent with the purposes and goals of the community plan and these land use regulations. So that's a lot to unpack, but I've got more. The purpose of the preliminary plan. And so again, this is where we're focused tonight and for the coming weeks and months. The purpose of the preliminary plan review is for the applicant to specifically respond to the issues and concerns identified during concept plan review and to propose detailed, properly engineered solutions to those problems that conform in all respects to the approved concept plan. The burden at preliminary plan stage is on the applicant to provide detailed information and mitigation proposals to be evaluated by the town. The preliminary plan shall include a community plan and development guideline to the development of the PUD, here and after the PUD community plan and development guidelines. We call them PUD guidelines or design standards if you're talking about architectural control standards, specifying the standards and limitations that will guide the future development of the property. So all of those things really add up to the town ensuring that a PUD, if the purpose is to allow for flexibility for a developer, PUDs are very common in Eagle County. And most of the resort communities that we know and love, or don't love, as it were, if you're not sure, they're all master plan communities. Most of those came in as PUDs, and instead of typical zoning where there are kind of standard one-size-fits-all setbacks and building height calculations and dimensions and standards for everything. There's a flexibility component in the PUD process. So if there's a design solution that doesn't quite stack up with the standard that otherwise would apply to, let's say, a new single-family home in an existing lot in town, the advantage to the developer or the designer would be to show how that either protects natural resources. If you have a more clustered land plan that allows for more green space or open space, that's one of the criteria. If flexibility results in increased density, but they do it in a manner that preserves, open space and protects environmental aspects of the site, they may be able to justify that density. If they bring other things to the table by way of public improvements, trails, multimodal things that have to do with pedestrian connectivity and biking and things like that, that's what it's for, is to encourage flexibility and creativity. But it's also, all of this means that we still have to make sure that the development works. We still have to make sure that it is safe, that it can be built as planned, that it won't burden the town in the future, due to essentially poor design or something that just we're not identifying now, but later is going to cause a problem. So it's kind of twofold, and I know that's, again, a lot to unpack, but that is what we should be focused on. And I've got a few more, and I'm sorry. So the criteria at the end of the day, when the Planning Commission needs to act on this application, these are the criteria by which you will make positive findings or negative findings. The first one being the resulting development will be consistent with the community plan and the proposed PUD reflects the character of the town. The next one is the area around the development can be planned to be in substantial harmony with the proposed PUD. The adjacent and nearby neighborhoods will not be detrimentally affected by the proposed PUD. The mass and scale of individual buildings and the overall density of the PUD shall be consistent in scale and character to avoid abrupt and/or severe differences with the surrounding area. The PUD can be completed within a reasonable period of time, which shall be determined prior to final approval of the PUD. The PUD provides for the appropriate treatment of the Eagle River Corridor as a community recreational amenity and focal point. The residents of the PUD have easy access to recreational amenities, Any increase in density proposed above what is permitted by the underlying zone district shall be mitigated by increasing the land dedications to open space, recreational amenities, and other public facilities and services. Any proposed commercial or industrial development can be justified, and the streets are adequate to support the anticipated traffic, and the development will not overload the streets outside the planned area. Also, proposed utility and drainage facilities are adequate for the population densities and type of development proposed. Residential density and intensity of other uses shall be limited as required by the town council upon consideration of the community plan, the official zone district map, and the specific characteristics of the subject land. A favorable finding is made on the environmental assessment or environmental impact report. And the preliminary plan for PUD shall comply with the following open space and recreation standards. And that goes on, I didn't list them all, but it basically says a minimum of 25% of the land area needs to be, or is recommended by the town code to be preserved as open space, usable open space. So with that said, that's a lot of information. I did create a staff report, and it is not a typical staff report, and I'll get into why that is. Staff essentially is not in a position yet to go through each one of those criteria and findings and make positive findings or even negative findings. We simply haven't gotten the information that we are still waiting for, or we have received it not enough time to fully evaluate it before tonight's meeting. So, you know, I did a staff report that kind of laid out what I just went through and also talked about the chronology of what we've done over the last year since the applicant applied to try to get to not only a complete application that we have all the information that we need to make those findings, but also to facilitate this public hearing. We had a request from the applicant to get on this hearing, to start the public hearing process. And so, you know, we've made a good faith effort to report on some of the things that, you know, at this point with this preliminary plan, things that conform to the conceptual plan that was presented just over a year ago, and to make some general statements on whether or not we think it's heading in the right direction. So, you know, some potential areas that I can report on now that I believe are, you know, heading in the right direction. Again, because this preliminary plan reflects very closely what was shown at the concept plan, which was, you know, it was supported by the town. It was more or less well received by the town. There were issues identified at that time that we needed to deal with. And, you know, to some degree, I'd say the applicant has done that. You know, there's a lot of information, there's a lot of studies that go into it. So right now, I would say that the plan appears to generally conform to the community plan and the town's growth management policies. From a planning perspective, from a growth management standpoint, from the standpoint of investing in new infrastructure, you don't want developments that leap far outside of town and you're extending roads, water, and sewer outside of town and, you know, leapfrog development fashion. This is a parcel that is, you know, right next to existing development. It is essentially infill development, previously disturbed site. It can be served for the most part, as long as, you know, technical details are worked out with sewer, water, all those things. And, you know, quite frankly, we still have some questions on those things, but from a land planning standpoint, it makes sense that this development in its general layout and density is proposed where it is. So, and that goes to the next point. And this ties back to some of those criteria and purposes of the PUD, that the plan exhibits efficient land use patterns, which can be integrated and informed by what's going on around them. So the existing neighborhood patterns, I know Greg has taken great pride in laying out the plan to reflect what he feels is kind of the existing fabric of town, the lot sizes, the general lot setbacks for where buildings are going to be, the general dimensions of building height, some of the architectural character that he's put forth in the design standards. those are things that I can look at as the town planner and say, yeah, those are heading in the right direction. And I think we could probably at some point when we're ready, make a positive finding on that. The plan does integrate transportation, a new street system, sidewalks, some pathways, things like that, that should or will contribute to the town's trail system and pedestrian infrastructure. The plan does permit and encourage a wide range of housing options, everything from, again, the cottage lots, which are smaller lots, to estate lots, which would be larger. A lot of standard lots in between that, which are more typical to the 5,000 square foot lots you see in town today, and then some multifamily housing tracts. The plan maintains or enhances access and parking for public lands and trailheads. I'll let Greg tell you about his design and how they, have tried to protect Game Creek and provide enhanced access and deal with the parking that's there today on Taylor Avenue, but provide parking elsewhere in a more organized fashion. The plan appears to provide minimum required open space. It has been planned to reflect the character of the town. Some areas of potential non-conformance, or areas where we're not either there with the information that we need right now. Staff hasn't had time to evaluate it properly, or we're kind of at a point where we're differing in our opinion with the applicant on some aspects. The first one, natural hazards avoidance and mitigation. This is not something we differ on. There's a potential rockfall hazard located above the estate lot portion of the property that we are still, essentially waiting on details on how that's going to be mitigated. And that has everything to do with the viability of some of those lots. And I'll let Greg kind of show you where those are. But some of the estate lots would be in the path of a potential rockfall hazard. There were some other things that the Colorado Geologic Survey, as a referral agent, pointed out: landslide hazards, other things that need to be further evaluated. And so I think we're looking forward to continuing to work through those issues. Town road standards and best practices. I know Jeff Spinell is on the call, and either now or the next slide would be a good time for him to maybe talk about some of the issues with whether or not certain aspects, certain areas within the plan conform to the town standards, or what the town would consider best practices. And these are, again, kind of safety issues, but they're also kind of nuts and bolts engineering standards that we need to continue to talk about. And I think I've got another slide here in a bit, but some of these things will be essentially formulated as variances that the applicant's going to ask you to approve. So if they're admitting or saying, we know we don't comply to the town standard on this particular road aspect, whether it's the road grade or it's a turning radius or something like that, they have to formally apply for, as part of this process, a variance. And we need to understand what the justification for those variations are. So that's another thing that's kind of outstanding right now. Access, legal access to this property, and that goes to the proposed use and improvement of Minturn Road. The applicant is proposing to make improvements to Minturn Road and to Taylor Avenue as part of this development. And so some of those would be kind of off-site improvements. But the fact right now is that we don't have confirmation that those roads, which are currently owned by the Union Pacific Railroad, can be deeded over either in fee simple or as an easement to this development in perpetuity. So they can never not be a road that serves this development. So that's a fairly significant outstanding issue that we need to resolve before we can make positive findings. And then there's a variety of other engineering and safety related standards that are still needing to be resolved. So I'm again listing these as kind of critical outstanding issues that we need to keep working with the applicant on resolving. There's some other issues that are not as concerning to me. Greg has been doing a lot of work to respond to some of my comments on what's called the PUD guide. So the development guiding document that will establish the allowed uses within this neighborhood. The development standards, again, for setbacks and building height and things like that, landscaping. That's called a PUD guide. And there's also a set of design guidelines that Greg is proposing. And for the most part, those documents are good and will be helpful. The PUD guide is the document that the town staff will use to enforce zoning and development controls in this development as it builds out. And so I've provided a lot of comments to him on how to make that document better and make it more enforceable and understandable for me or whoever sits in my seat 10 years from now or 5 years from now. And he'll continue to work on that. I just got a round of revisions from him, I think last week, and I haven't really gone through all of them. So that's another issue that we need to keep working on. HOA covenants. So there will be a homeowners association with this development, and that homeowners association will have different responsibilities and covenant controls on different aspects. I'm sure a lot of you are used to or have lived in a covenant controlled community. We're still working through some of the details on that, and the town attorney's office has provided, again, numerous comments that will hopefully make those documents better, more enforceable for the applicant. There are still some external referral agency comments that need to be responded to, or at least we need clarification on how they've resolved some of those issues or responded. There was a consumptive water use analysis done for this project, and there's been some back and forth between the town's consultants and the applicant's consultants. I think we have an updated water use analysis, a consumptive use analysis, but I don't know that we've verified that the issues have been resolved. I also note that there's been some comments from the Eagle River Water and Sanitation District regarding the design of some of the portions of the sanitary sewer. And perhaps Greg can give a quick update on the progress that's been made working with the district on addressing some of their concerns. At this time, I'm going to stop, and I'm going to go back to this slide. I'm going to ask if either Richard or Jeff have any comments that they want to talk about with regard to, the legal access issues that we're still trying to resolve and looking for the applicant to provide that evidence to us, or some of the engineering concerns.
Sure, I can go ahead and talk a little bit about the legal access issues on the railroad property. As folks I'm sure are familiar with, Minturn Road and Taylor Avenue bound the proposed development, and these these roads have developed over time on railroad property. Portions of Taylor have come into the town's ownership and control, but not all of it. There's, as noted in the memo in the packet, there are also portion of Railroad Avenue that the town also does not currently control. The main issue for the town here is either having fee or easement dedication to the town in perpetuity, and having that irrevocable right of access into these roads, both for utility purposes, for maintaining the roadway, for clearing the roadway, and understanding that railroads have their own set of regulations for how their property is managed. So that negotiation with Union Pacific is ongoing. We understand that there may have been some very recent updates to this, but at this point we have not reviewed any documentation of an easement deed or a dedication deed that would meet the town standards. Particularly, two issues would be waiver of governmental immunity, which for the town is very important, that the town not be liable in tort, basically for personal injury that occurs on town roads. And another is potential violation of the Taxpayers' Bill of Rights. This comes up in indemnification language. That's a complex legal issue I will not dive into unless asked. Otherwise, it sounds like the railroad is hopefully willing to grant the type of access that is necessary, which would be for all types of utilities, all the utility providers, for the town's use in perpetuity, and also in such a manner at the railroad crossing that the railroad could not close off access to the basically to the crossing, because that's the type of language that's in their boilerplate crossing. The understanding that Union Pacific has hundreds of thousands of these crossings probably, and this is the language that they like to have in there, that they can close off access to their crossings. But from the town's perspective, that is a very important issue for safety purposes, and for being able to provide maintenance and services to what is going to become, if approved, an integral part of the town's infrastructure system. And so looking forward 100 years, the town needs to have these rights in perpetuity. So that's, happy to answer any questions about that.
Thank you, Richard. Jeff, are you able to maybe speak a little bit about some of the outstanding issues that you're looking to help get resolved?
Sure. The major road issue surrounds Fifth Street. And the grade on Fifth Street is very steep. It's an 8% grade. The road design does not meet the Minturn Town Code. Chapter 4, the roadway design and technical standards, requires the permissible intersection grades for all streets and intersections should be no more than 4%. And it stipulates 30-foot transition distance for driveways and 50 feet for residential street intersections. And this is a very difficult standard to meet, because it requires that each driveway have a flat access from Fifth Street. And they don't have that, and that would be very difficult to get. They have pointed to the Eagle County road standards, which allow steeper grades. And they have pointed to the fact that the county will allow a maximum of 8% for a road. However, the code for the Eagle County code goes on to say that a maximum of 6% is more appropriate for suburban roads where stopping and starting are not required. And then the other thing that has been omitted from the county standards is that paragraph 4 does allow the increased grade on low volume roadways, but stipulates there shall be no access approaches in the segment with the increased grade. There are 2 intersections and as many as 12 driveways proposed along Fifth, and the plans don't meet these standards. And so we've been working with the applicant to try and make some adjustments. There is a problem, in our opinion, with the intersection separation between Spur Road and Ice House. There are about 50 feet of separation, and best practices are that those intersections should be offset by 100 feet, or they should be directly across the street from one another. The applicant feels like Spur Road is a driveway and not a public street, and there are standards out there. Eagle County is one of them that stipulate that a driveway can serve no more than 3 houses, and we would subscribe to that. That Ice House really is a street, not a driveway, and we believe that those 2 roads could line up, and if they lined up, it would be possible to design that as a safer intersection, where there would be a transition coming into the intersection, a flat intersection, and then a transition out of it. And the transition would be going from the 8% grade to a 4% grade. And the purpose of the 4% grade is starting and stopping, and it's completely a safety issue, so that a car can stop if the road is slick. That's really the biggest thing. There's a lot of other engineering issues we're talking to them about, but Fifth Street is really kind of the cornerstone of the issues right now.
Jeff, were there other general areas that you wanted to talk about? I know the mitigation plan for rockfall, I think we're still waiting for details on that.
The plans, we had asked that they actually show the run out path for the rockfall hazard. And the rockfall hazard path, they have provided it. It goes directly through lots 90, 94, and 93 at the end of Ice House. And it goes through the building envelope of those 3 lots. It touches lot 89, but the biggest impact is the first 3 lots that I mentioned. And we've asked that, they're proposing rockfall protection. They're showing a fence along the back property line, but there's no design for that fence or standards that I have seen at this point. So, I just can't see. I think they need to provide a plan for mitigating that rockfall before those 3 lots can be approved.
Okay. One other issue, and I didn't want to get into too far into the weeds tonight, and I apologize to everyone watching. I don't have the site plan ready to show. I think that's coming later when Greg is presenting. So we might have to circle back on some of these issues, but I think there was also a concern about a potential solution for Taylor Avenue and Minturn Road and that intersection and going to a one-way for a portion of that. I don't know if that's still one of those outstanding things that we're looking for details on. Yes,
it is. It has not been worked out yet. The traffic report references either the 2 ways. The intersection, the existing intersection, is at a skew, and it's not. It's basically not a safe intersection. A safe intersection should be close to a 90-degree intersection, so that as you pull up to the intersection, you can look both directions and make sure it's safe to proceed. And their traffic engineer recommended that that intersection either be redesigned as a 90-degree intersection or as a one-way street, either in or out, that it be a one-way street. The last revisions that we got, and we haven't had a chance to fully review them because we haven't had them very long, does provide for Taylor to be changed to a one-way street starting at 4th Avenue, but the portion of Taylor from 4th to Minturn Road would remain a 2-way street. And other than a little bit less traffic impact from this development, it does not address anything safety-wise on that intersection.
Okay. Jeff, Richard, anything further at this point, or is that it?
I think that's an it for now.
Okay. Thank you both. I'm going to go ahead and wrap up my presentation. So as I kind of started out, there's a lot that goes into this, and the fact that we are here tonight talking about this and starting the public hearing process, I think is a good thing. But I will say that I don't think staff was fully ready to be here tonight because of some of these outstanding issues. Quite frankly, I've been doing this for 25 years in Eagle County, and PUDs of this significance for a town like Minturn, if you don't have legal access, that's usually kind of one of those things at a completeness review standpoint that you just don't even let the file go forward for review until you have some of these things figured out. So I think in some respects, the cart is before the horse on this, but I understand the pressures that the applicant is under. They're under a contract and they've had several extensions with Union Pacific Railroad. I don't know that we need to get into that tonight. I don't think that's part of your concern as a planning commission, but there's all sorts of things that, they're dealing with. The town is charged with making sure that we have a development that can be approved, that is safe, that is designed properly, and that will last. And the people that buy lots here, that they buy a lot knowing that they can build a house and not have problems constructing it, whether it's due to soils or drainage issues or things like that. Those are all the things that we have to work out to make sure that we can approve this and it makes sense for the town. There's other issues with regard to, kind of the financial impacts that the town is going to take on in serving this development, not just police service and emergency services for new residents, but the maintenance costs that go into the open spaces. The open spaces are an amenity that are asked for and provided. But in this case, the applicant's proposing to, give those over to the town to maintain. So there's all sorts of things that the town has to consider in approving something like this, knowing all along that, in the grand scheme of things with regard to the community plan, it does present a logical growth pattern. And it is kind of a good thing in that respect. So I'm going to circle back real quickly here, just remind everybody that the concept plan was supported. There was a lot of things that we felt were right about that and logical as far as this development in this location. And the preliminary plan more or less reflects that concept plan. Again, this is the stage when we should be looking at, crossing T's and dotting I's for some things, but really just, does it work? Can it be built safely? And that's the applicant's burden to provide the evidence to do that so we can make those positive findings. And at this time, we have not received what we need. We have not had certain issues that are of critical importance to the town resolved or evidence provided that we can make positive findings. I do believe we'll get there, but we're not there tonight. And the staff and the Planning Commission therefore can't make positive findings. In my staff report, I was recommending denial. And again, in 25 years, I've done that less than a handful of times. And one of the reasons why that is for what I just said. We're not at the point where we could make enough positive findings that would cause me as the planning director to recommend approval or approval with conditions. There's a lot of things that we've kind of put out to the applicant as kind of conditions or things that need to be resolved. I think there are 100 of them or more. And that's not a good position to be in either. If anyone's tracked with what's going on in Eagle County and Edwards with the Edwards River Park, that's a development that went through, I think, 8 or so planning commission hearings, 8 or 9 Board of County Commissioner hearings, and they still had a really long list of potential conditions of approval. And now they've tabled that application. That's not a good place to be. I think our job as staff, and I've told this to the applicant multiple times, is that our job is to make sure that when this does go before the Planning Commission, there's as few issues as possible. And I do think that we've worked really hard, Greg certainly has, and all of his team, to try to address those concerns and get us the answers that we're looking for. And he has done that in many cases. But the reason why I'm recommending denial is because of that. And also the code, the Minturn Municipal Code, does not permit the planning director or the planning department to make a recommendation to table or continue the file. Our choices in the code are to recommend approval with conditions, or denial. So that's why you're seeing that recommendation for denial. I will tell you that the Planning Commission does have the ability to continue this. And that's up to the Planning Commission. If you feel like, after you hear the applicant's presentation and we, have further deliberation, that there is movement forward and there's going to be an ability to address the concerns and get to a point where we can start making findings, then you're within your ability to recommend a tabling or a continuance to a certain date in the future. So as I see it, I think the next step is to continue to work with the applicant to resolve outstanding issues, allow staff to review some of the revisions that were submitted last week. That we were so busy getting ready for this hearing, I don't know that all of us have even looked at some of the revisions that have been proposed. And then perhaps a planning commission meeting in the future, date to be determined. Planning commission recommendation to council. So after you get done with, if there's another hearing or another 2 or 3 hearings, however many hearings you think you need to work through and fully understand this application, the end result of that would be the planning commission making a formal recommendation to town council to approve with conditions, or deny the proposal. And with that, I think that's all we have. I want to make sure everyone who hasn't already understands that you can submit written comments. You can email us at planner1@minturn.org and give us your comments, concerns, questions, things that we can, either pass along to the applicant so he can help address those, or we can at least make them part of the public record. Again, my name is Scott Hunn. I'm the consulting planning director for Minturn. And that's my email address, scott@hunnplanning.com. You can email me if you have questions or comments. Madison Harris, who is planner 1 at the town, planner1@minturn.org. So with that, I will turn it back over to you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much. And I can either take questions now, or I think Greg is probably ready to walk you through some of his slides. Not sure if anyone needs a break, but.
Madam Chair, if I may present a quickly little legal issue. Could you please ask Scott to confirm the status of public notice? An important piece of the quasi-judicial proceeding.
Thank you, Richard. So my understanding is that we provided public notice in accordance with the code for the preliminary plan. However, I don't believe that we included in that notice the preliminary plat, which is the preliminary subdivision plat that we also review at this stage, and the proposed zone change. So taking the property from the PUD holding zone to essentially the Minturn North PUD as a zone district. Those pieces were left out, I believe. Madison, are we going to provide notice before the next hearing that includes all 3 of those?
Yes, we will be.
Okay. Is that what you were looking for, Richard?
Yes, thank you. And I tend to think that we're okay because the part of the preliminary plan application is the plat and the zone amendment, but just to be overly careful, we will renotice. Thank you.
Okay. Anybody else? With that, Greg, would you like to go ahead, please?
Sure. Yeah, thank you. Could I just a real quick clarification? If there's not public comment tonight, there won't be any determination then at the end of this meeting, is that right? It's just automatically runs to the next meeting?
Scott, would you like to?
Well, it's entirely up to the Planning Commission, Greg. They have an option to approve with conditions, deny, and I believe they can also continue the file.
Can they do that without public comment though?
If it's an approval or a denial, if it's an actual determination, then I believe there will need to be public comment. Yes.
Right.
So is a continuance or a table a determination as you're outlining?
No, it is not.
Okay. Okay. All right. Thanks. That clarifies that. So yeah, thank you, everyone. Congratulations to the new commissioners. Thank you to the commission. Thank you very much to staff for the amazing amount of work that you guys have been doing with this as well. I know it's been a challenge for us all. Also, thank you to the public that have put their 2 cents in and also had a part in kind of helping to create this project. Let's see, I was going to switch over to try to share my screen, but before I do, real quick, I did, I had heard that there was some concern that we, as the developer, had an open house last night, and that the town was not invited to it. And I just want to clarify that we actually, in preparation for this meeting, thinking initially that it was going to be an in-person meeting, went ahead and had LGM in town put together a model that we wanted to have at the meeting, and then found out that it wasn't going to be, that it was going to be via Zoom. So we reached out to people that have put deposits down and said, hey, we want to get together, have an event so you can see the model and see where we're at. I just want to make it very clear to the commissioners and to staff, we have been very upfront and very vocal to everyone that's presented an interest in this project, that we're still in the public approval process. We're not making any assumptions that this is a slam dunk and we've got it done. I want you to understand that, having been on planning commission, I appreciate the position you're in. I don't want you to think that we're coming in here thinking that it's that it's a done deal. Everybody is very aware still that we're going through the approval process and still working through that with the town. So I just wanted to let everybody know that. Madison, is it possible for me to share my screen?
Yes, you should have the ability to. Let me know if you don't, and I can certainly play around with it.
All right, and I apologize to everybody out there if this doesn't work, but I'm going to give it a shot. Okay. Can anyone see anything there?
We see you screen broadcasting.
Yeah, take it that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. Oh, there
I
we go.
assume that's not what we're supposed to be seeing.
All right, can people see that?
Yes, we can see the plans now.
Excellent. All right, that worked. Okay, so many of you are already up to speed kind of on what the project is, but I will go through, not ad nauseum, but I'll give everybody just an overview. Again, Scott outlined where the site is and what the site is. We've got approximately, we're in the middle of the site, there's 4th Street, which exists where it currently is. To the south of that would be a phase 1. And to the north of that is a phase 2. These are all residential lots, as was mentioned. They range in size from a small 2,500 square foot cottage lot up to the 10,100 square foot estate lot. And they kind of vary in between there. We also have 3 multifamily lots that we are seeking entitlement eventually for 8 units apiece at those. And those are at the south part of town, adjacent to the existing townhomes. The lots in the community, as was mentioned there, we're looking at similar zoning requirements as far as setbacks, bulk standards, to try to maintain the similar scale and proportion of the homes that are in Minturn. The intent for the project, as I had stated early on, really was I wanted to keep this from becoming a condominium development or a single builder subdivision. For me, it was all about what could we do out here that will kind of strengthen and extend the fabric of Minturn. I've always said, walking through Minturn, walking down the street, you look at homes and you can see the personalities of the people that live there. It's, whether it's the paint on the house or the design of the house, There's, people talk about kind of the funky, eclectic nature of Minturn. A lot of it has to do with people's personalities coming through with where they live. Mostly for the better, sometimes for the worse, but that's, part of what makes Minturn great. So the intent for this was, create lots that individuals can come in and express themselves without, being overly regulated and overly restricted. The smaller lots create a level of attainability that allow people to come in. There's no minimum size to build, so someone has the ability to come in and build a small cottage if they want. There will be some people that come in and want to build big houses, but that's the difference between this type of a development and a builder's subdivision. Often in a builder's subdivision, a large scale developer will come in and they'll try to maximize the envelope and then make it repetitious. This doesn't need to be that way. When it's a single person, when it's an individual coming in, they have the ability to not maximize. They can build what they need and what works for them. So I think we're going to end up with a lot of diversity and character in this part of the neighborhood, which I think will fit in great. For the amenities, we are proposing extending the Game Creek Trail down to Minturn Road and formalizing it with parking. I know that area sees a lot of parking. There were some anecdotal numbers that came up that were, kind of blew me away. So as soon as we started, I began to pay much more attention to it. The number of cars that I've seen there isn't close to what I've been told has been there. But what I'm trying to do is to avoid a large parking lot, and I created Game Creek Trailhead. It's about 14 spaces, but then there's also about 18 spaces on Ice House for overflow for those busier times of year. We're proposing a trail through the middle of the project as well. On this, it says the Minturn Mile Trail, and 2 parks in the center, a community garden area, and then identified on here as a kids park. We've looked at a couple of different options, and right now we're looking at an ice rink, a year-round ice rink. That's had gotten mixed reviews as to the direction that's gone. But as Scott said, we're providing a large amount of open space. We're also looking to create an extension of the Eco Trail to tie the town into the future expansion of it, to the north. For infrastructure, this site right now, that doesn't really have any infrastructure on it, and in fact has quite a bit of utilities that don't even work anymore. But yeah.
Greg, for interrupting, I just want to let everybody know that Tom Priest has now joined the meeting.
Thank you. I'm gonna scroll down to look at be able to kind of pull up one of the more detailed sheets. So this is what you see on your screen is the phase 1, showing some of the park areas and the different lot areas. And as I was speaking about infrastructure on the site, we're going to be addressing all the stormwater system that is non-existent, capturing a lot of the stormwater that sheet flows across this site, treating it prior to it being conveyed over to Game Creek. Be putting in Game Creek protections. The trail that we're presenting is going to be outside of the buffer, and will be also supplied with a split rail fence and some signage to try to help keep people out of the creek area. To cut down on the amount of forts that seem to be getting built down there. We'll be redoing Minturn Road, Taylor Road, the county road out up to the north across the bridge, as well as installing a turn lane on Highway 24, fixing the culvert at Game Creek and Minturn Road, a large amount of site cleanup that's going to be taking place. So that is, that's just kind of the overview of all the technical aspects of what is taking place on the site without getting too far in detail, although I'm happy to go further in detail. But, one of the, just as a kind of quick presentation as to why this project is right for the town. It provides organic growth. It's not a large scale development where something, that's getting built that automatically, after 12 months, the lights all get turned on and the meters start running and everybody's there. This is going to be much more organic, where you've got, people will be building right away. Some of them may be building in 5 years. It's just more of a manageable growth. In our fiscal analysis, it's projected that this project will provide an approximate $11 million income for the town of Minturn over the next 10 years. It improves all of the roads that we talked about, many of which are in very bad condition and need to be redone. We'll be working with Union Pacific. They're going to be dedicating a third of the water rights that are attached to this larger portion of land that they're carving this out of. We've really focused our efforts on locals living here, for this being locals. As Scott mentioned, we are proposing a 21% deed restriction where that's locals only. There's not an affordability component to it as far as any price cap or income limit, but you will have to live here or work, and work here a minimum of 30 hours. Additionally, when we did kind of the soft release, again, we haven't technically gone out to market. There's no listing for this. We did an announcement on Vale Daily that we were going to start taking deposits and getting some interest, and put forward that within the first 2 weeks, we were going to have all Minturn residents would receive priority on the list. 2 weeks after that, Eagle County residents would have priority. And then after that, it would be more of an open scenario, was first come, first serve. We had a lot of interest, which was great. We received a number of deposits. Out of those, 95% of those people are from Eagle County. Only 5% of the people that currently have deposits are from out of county. So while there's no restriction on it, it has been a great tool to incentivize and kind of help this become more of a locals community. This project is going to bring a critical mass. It's going to help get people downtown, people that are going to go to restaurants, shop, the markets, use public transportation. So I think there's a lot of benefits with this project. The one thing that we have hit with this, though, is the cost for it are much higher than what we had originally planned and hoped for. The project costs are approaching $30 million. The appraised value on the finished project is only $32 million. I know that people look at this and they think, oh, this is going to be this bank, but we're finding ourselves in a tough spot, and that's, I think, why, unfortunately, I think that's why I've been pushing staff so hard in areas where, maybe I shouldn't push so hard. And I understand that profits are not the concern of the Planning Commission, but it does affect the project's overall viability. And there are a lot of things that play into it, especially when we start to get into a lot of the offsite costs. So Scott did mention, Scott and Madison, the consultants, referral agencies, have just done a ton of work with us on this, and they've done a great job. They really have. But I want to point out, Scott did mention that of the 122 conditions that were listed, we've already addressed and are underway on almost all of them. There's only a handful of these items that he pointed out as well. that we need some direction on. And that was one of the big reasons why why we were pushing for this meeting, for an opportunity to sit down with the Planning Commission and go over a couple of these items that really will affect the direction. And I think if we were able to get just some direction on those, it would allow us to just be able to button everything up so we can get to that much higher level of completion that the town would like to see, and that we'd like to see as well, to keep this moving forward quickly. So while I understand I think a little bit more, but while the denial recommendation is an option, we certainly want to continue to move forward with continued cooperation with staff as we fulfill all the requirements of the PUD, the preliminary PUD. We have a huge outpouring of support from the community. There's a massive upside for the town, and there really is a dire need for some of these offsite improvements that this project is going to bring. So again, it sounds like we're going to be able to get to the point where we need to. I think without too many difficulties. Again, it's really just hoping to get some clarity on a few of those outstanding items that Jeff had mentioned as well. So I'm sure that the Planning Commission has a number of questions as well. And I'm sorry, as I was talking, I just kind of stopped scrolling through things, but I do have images of the model if anybody would be interested in seeing it.
Yes, please.
Okay. Let's see if I can do this. Oh. All right. So here, let me go to the overall. There's the overall of it. These guys do an amazing job. And I could scroll through as well here, I think. Yeah, I can. So this is looking down at 4th Street, Minturn Road, kind of where we're talking about the potential for the ice rink going, some of the different lots, and shows Taylor on here as well. But this was Charles over at LGM here in town put this together. It was pretty cool. I wasn't sure how accurate it was going to be. It's obviously it's much better in person, but they were able to essentially just take a civil engineer drawing with all the topography and cut it. So it's exact, it's exact to what it would end up being. But again, this is, that's kind of the overall. I'm sure that you all have some more specifics and areas that you would like to have some more clarification. And I'm happy to provide what I can.
Okay, with that, shall we go to the Planning Commission? Jenna, would you like to start, please?
All right, well, good to see you, Greg. It's been a while.
Yeah,
thanks for coming. Thanks for coming back, and I appreciate all the. We kind of anticipated back when we were doing our concept plan that there was going to be a lot of logistical and technical issues with this property, given its history, given the condition of the roads, which we already knew. So thumbs up to you and all the hard work you're doing, because I know that you're tackling it as best you possibly can. Hopefully it won't stymie what's happening here, but I also understand in that same breath why you have a very narrow margin on costs versus profits, and I think that is important. That's a vitality issue, and we don't want things to fall by the wayside or you get underwater. So again, good luck how that turns out as well. I just want to say I really appreciate what you guys have done as far as the offsite improvements that really strengthen the relationship of the existing neighborhoods to this new neighborhood. So I appreciate that consideration that you've put into that, especially on Taylor. I know that, I've driven on that road several times. I know what it's like. It's an old road. So this is going to be much better. And it also actually, hopefully will assist, the parking up there. I'm not sure exactly what we're doing for the market. I can't remember, but historically market vendors would park up there. If there's opportunities for that, that's great, because that helps one of our biggest draws into town. I'm really excited about, and this is what I said during concept, having an influx of people right downtown. I remember when, restaurants were packed. Now they're not to the same degree, and it's great. It's going to be great to have some bodies and vibrancy down there. So that hasn't changed, and I'm really hoping that we get a bank back and some other downtown improvements with more economic development and a variety of small businesses that will pop up in relation to that. Hopefully people that are moving here into those units will be business owners as well. So that'd be great. I just wondered, out of curiosity, how many homes used to be there when the railroad was kind of going back in the day? Was this whole property littered with people living there, where it's just kind of concentrated on the last, third or 2/3?
So from what I've seen, I mean, apart from the trailers that are there, I think there were, at one point, I think there were a total of 8 trailers. There was, historically, there was an office and a residence, as well as like outbuildings and shop buildings around the same area, actually, that the trailers are in right now.
Okay, so it's just kind of concentrated on that end. So what are you finding with the soils? Are you going to have to replace a lot of the soils? Is that one of the big costs that's coming in?
No, the soils weren't too bad. The town the railroad had provided a soil assessment from Jacobs Engineering, which had, I want to say, around 24 test pits where they did soil tests. And then during our phase 1, the phase 1 group had looked at that for evaluating the site for the soils, and identified an area up by the trailers, actually, that was above safe levels. So they asked us to go to a phase 2 on that section. Phase 2, they went and did tests all around that area, and found that some of those soils do need to be taken out. They're of a level where they can be taken to a landfill. They're not something where it needs to be, like a high level of treatment to it.
That's great. And the question was kind of in my head was, because you're selling the lots off, how, when someone comes in to build, are they going to all of a sudden have to do like a major removal of soil and back? So you answered that question. So that bodes well for future development, as it trickles in, like you were saying.
Yeah, they should not. And all this is going to be public. Well, it already is, but public information for purchasers and anyone interested.
No, I think it's great. Yeah, I know that we're in Eagle County. We have very limited topsoils and so forth. So it's just checking on that. And you didn't find any big rocks, so no one's going to have to do major excavation, even on the small lots.
Not that we saw, out of the geotech borings, we didn't see, there wasn't any groundwater. So that was good. And I don't think that any of the borings hit large boulders, but it is Minturn and it is that area. So I'm sure there probably will be some hidden in there, some nice Easter eggs.
Yeah. Well, that's good. That's good. Overall, I read staff's comments and I agree with them that you still have some technical work that you need to get through before, they have a position on there, and I look forward to seeing how things are resolved. And that's all
Thanks.
I have right now.
Yeah, I think the vast majority of those comments, it's not really, we're not arguing with them at all. It's just a matter of, we got to get some things done. I think the big one that we were really hoping to get some direction on was that 5th Street grade offset intersection, that type of thing, as that has horizontal implications.
Are you sharing driveways at all?
We don't have, actually, originally I didn't want to show any driveways. I wanted that to be kind of up to the people that bought the lot. Jeff Spinell had, because of trying to figure out parking has been something that has been on a lot of people's minds, had asked that we show designate the parking so we could show what the amount of off or on-street parking that we could provide was. So we don't have any shared driveways shown. It's more of every lot has its driveway and here's what the implications to parking are.
Would that be a good solution, just to, on that particular road, mandate that there is a share to limit those cuts and to get a wider, apron so they can actually get a flatter, connection and so forth?
I mean, doesn't impact a lot of lots. I don't think it's out of the question. The bigger issue there was the spur road that's offset from Ice House, that we were identifying it as a driveway. And that part of that came from the maintenance of that to the 8 cottages that it served. So we went with the designation of driveway. It seemed to work with the plan. For us, it seemed like it was going to be a very low volume road. It's south facing. I think, that's kind of getting into that aspect of it, but that's where we were on that.
Yeah. Well, I guess the benefit of having an undulating roadway is it'll keep your speeds down. But if kids are playing, but all right, that's all I have for now.
Thanks.
Chris?
Okay, unmuted. Let's see, Scott, thank you so much for your big presentation. I have to say, that was a book to read, and I need to read it about again and again. And I still don't know if I'll understand it, but thank you for summarizing. That definitely helped. And Madison, thank you for all your help. Greg, incredible. That's all I can say. As I look at that and the land there, Minturn North, I like what I see. I like seeing where you and Lynn and I live, and not just being transported a little bit to the north of us. I have to say, I would almost like to. It was great seeing the map, the scale model. It would almost be nice to put little cars on there, because I just know lately we have a ton of cars parking on Pine Street. That's kind of my worry, I guess, is over there. There's just going to be a ton of cars parking, and I think it's always a parking issue here, but I have to say, I really do like what you're doing. I like seeing Minturn being that way and not just huge houses that it could be. I guess, reading all the comments from Madison and Scott, and I think that was a good thing. Are we putting the cart before the horse? I guess I almost need to see some of the answers to the questions posed. But I guess one thing I had was, you mentioned that the funky, eclectic style of Minturn, with this development, my question would be with the HOA, like things like clotheslines. To me, I would think I could just put a clothesline up in my yard. Can they do that over there too, or?
So that's part of what we're working on with the HOA. There were a number of comments that came back from staff of items that needed to be added and changed, and we're in the process of doing that. Will those be allowed there? That
was just something that came up. I like to hang my clothes outside.
It's a good question.
But,
it's a good question. And it saves energy. So it's not like it's a good thing too.
Yeah. Reading, just Madison sent out an email with some public comments. It was interesting reading a couple that were definitely for it. A couple that had questions. I guess I'm kind of just, but I guess I need to see the answers that the commission or that staff put out there, but I think you're going in the right direction. I guess it's not even it's just a question general. How much do you think, like a 4,000 square foot lot, what's that going to run? Like, is this affordable, attainable, like kind of hard to attain?
So it's, I've been saying attainable. I haven't been saying affordable. when we started the project, we were looking at an affordable component. We reached out to the housing to Eagle County Housing. Geez, I'm sorry, I can't think of the name. They had just recently finished their housing guidelines, and we're sitting there and having this discussion, and there was kind of a silence when we started to bring it up. And it was Kim Bell Williams. She said, we just finished working on this for a year and didn't put anything in there for vacant lots. So it became this, we were trying to figure out on our end, how do you regulate an affordability on a vacant lot? Is it restrictions to building? Is there a limited amount that someone can spend on a structure? How does it work when the structure's finished? What's the value? How do you place the value? So we, as far as the deed restriction was concerned, we leaned much more heavily on the locals component. The affordability component to it in my head was the diversity of the housing types, the multifamily units, the ADUs, the lack of size restrictions on what you can build there. We're really still trying to work through the final pricing on where these are going to be. Again, as I said, what we thought our costs were going to be up front aren't anywhere near where they are now. I point people, there's a couple of lots up at the end of Taylor Street that have sold in the last 2 to 4 years. And I think that knowing the conditions and the terms of each one of those that sold, the lot that's farther north, I think is what I'm using as a kind of a trying to figure out where we're going to end up being as far as a comp is concerned. That sold for about $305 about 4 years ago. And that lot is roughly the buildable area. That lot is roughly similar in size to one of our standard lots. So, given the amount of improvements and work that we're doing to the site and to this part of the community, it's, again, I can't give you a price, but 305 4 years ago, I'm not even sure exactly where that lands us right now with the pricing.
Yeah, the reason I ask is I would love to see young families moving into Minturn, and to be frank, it would be hard with a young family at all to pony up $500,000 to make it all work. And I guess I was just trying to, I know you're building other things too, but I was just trying to get an idea.
Yeah. So, for me, and I've told this story before, when my wife and I moved here back in 2000, we couldn't stay. We had to move away because we couldn't afford to buy anything. We couldn't afford to live here. If I had the opportunity, I'm an architect, so I might think a little differently, but if I had the opportunity to buy a small lot and put up a garage with an apartment above it, I would have been tickled pink, and then eventually built a single family house when I got to that point. So we're trying to create options for people, alternatives.
Okay. Well, thank you, Greg. And again, I like what I see. I just need to, see answers like how staff is asking. So,
Sure.
But I know you've worked really hard. I never see you out in the neighborhood, so I know you're just sitting in your office working 24/7. So,
yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks, Chris.
Jeff?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Hi, Greg.
Hi.
And Jim and everybody else that's on the call. Thank you. First of all, just a quick side note. I just want to congratulate all of the new well, first Lynn and Jennifer being reelected, and then Elliot, welcome. And Tom, thank you, Tom, for your service to our country and to stepping up to serve our town now. So first and foremost, Greg, you know, one thing I heard from you a second ago was it sounded like you really want to get some clarity on a few things from this board. And I don't know that I feel like I have a handle on what exactly that is. So, you know, with the 100+ issues that are out there that are kind of waiting for answers or in the process of getting answers, you know, I feel like there quite a few of them, if not the majority of them, are so technical that unless you're an engineer or professional in the industry, you're going to have a hard time understanding what half of these things are. And when you read through the packet, and so obviously we have a lot of professional consultants, and the town has a lot of professional consultants, and you know, everyone that got sent this stuff and all the referral comments that went back, I've read them all, and there's a lot of questions, and I generally feel like they're all going to get answered in time, and they're all going to get dealt with appropriately in time. So I want to know, you know, what do you need from us as a board, and maybe from the public, because obviously, you know, not having the public comment portion of it tonight is important. And I know I just got the email today that had the written public comments, and I haven't even had a chance to read those yet. But there was only 9 of them as of 3 p.m. today. And I'm going to read them all, but I would assume that there's going to be more, and there's probably going to be, you know, calling in and want to talk, etc. So, you know, that's my first question to you is like, what, if they were just some bullet points, even like, what are the issues that kind of you need us to help you clarify and hammer out so that you can move forward? Because I understand that the clock's ticking, and the longer you have a bunch of gray areas that you don't know what the answers to those are going to be or which direction you move in, that's not helping you or the bottom line or anything else. So I guess that's my first question.
Yeah, you know, that I could, there's a number of issues, but the big, and Jeff Spinell had pointed it out earlier as well. The big, I can't think, point of needing clarity and not agreeing. Our engineers disagree with the town engineer on the. Well, it's not that we, you know, well, there are a couple spots where we disagree, but there are some areas where we are going to be looking for variation that would be, you know, a big help. And that's one of those is what's being identified as the spur road that we were calling the kind of that drive for those 8 cottage units. It's offset from Ice House, as well as the road grade along 5th. I think that's really the big one. You know, if we feel, and our traffic engineer has written support, civil engineer, he's on the line here, he can speak to it a little bit as well. We feel like that given the conditions of this location, the low volume, the type of neighborhood, that what we're proposing is fine, that it is safe, that we're not, it's not, people aren't going to be backing out of there. So I think that's something that I would like to have the planning commission weigh in on. So if I have to go back and make changes, I can make those changes. You know, I've looked at the changes. I feel like what we've proposed just works the best. I think it works well for the trails, for the parks that are in here. there's talk about, I've had people say, well, you could move this around and lose units. We're beyond that point. We can't lose units. I mean, with the amount of offsite work that needs to be done and the cost of all the infrastructure that's going into this, we can't. So I'm trying to find a solution, and I just need to have the planning commission's feedback to be able to, I guess, figure out the next steps.
Greg, can you pull up the site plan that shows those units as we're talking about it so we can
I
stare at
can.
it? Thank you.
Yeah, because one thing, Greg, that, specifically, I think a picture's worth 1,000 words. And if there needs to be more detailed photos or 3D renderings or something to give us more perspective, I can tell you that I've done a number of subdivisions over the years, and I was the one that was the guy going in to clear the lots and clear the trees and put in the gas and the sewer and the water and the curb and the gutters and get it prepared. And I can tell you that most people can't understand what 4% to 8% grade feels like.
Well, okay, yeah.
You know what I
So,
mean?
yeah. And so just for reference, this is Taylor. Here, let me see if I got a better. I almost want to pull up the model.
Yeah, that's probably your best tool at the moment.
If I can. So here's Fifth Street right there. And then Taylor, as you can see where Fifth Street hits Taylor, and then Taylor goes up to Game Creek parking.
Mm-hmm.
That section of Taylor is actually at 11%.
Okay.
For reference. So and most people have driven up there.
Yep.
Fifth Street, and Justin is the civil engineer is on here. But we've got about a 200-foot section of Fifth Street that is at 8%. We're flattening out at the intersection of Icehouse Avenue. So it's not 8% through there. It flattens out maybe I should have the civil engineer on here talking, but it flattens out there per requirements, and then goes up to the 8% up to Taylor. Part of the issue with the percentage, that Second Street, that was one of the original design that we had done had a single street through. I don't know how to stop. Did it? Okay, sorry about that. I feel like, sorry about that. The original design we had a single street through, and there was a lot of public feedback that said that they thought it would be better to have two streets to, serve Taylor. The difference between the elevation at Taylor and Minturn Road, we're already raising Minturn Road. And I think if we're stuck at a point where we've got to stay to a 6% grade, we're going to be limited to one road. Fourth is kind of where Taylor bottoms out a little bit and then comes over to Minturn Road. Anywhere else, the grade's going to be too steep.
Greg, can you pull up the site plan again?
Well, I just think it's interesting, the perspective of the fact that stretch of road from the bottom of Game Creek down is 11%. And it has driveways that are probably steeper than that coming out perpendicular to that road now. And we've approved plans, like probably in my time on planning, we probably approved 3 or 4 homes to be constructed on that stretch of road. obviously we can't change the grade of the existing road, but we've approved homes to be built on an 11% grade road. And that's, you know, that's a stone's throw from the road we're talking about. So I'm not necessarily saying that it's not a big deal, but, you know, it's, I don't know that we've had any car accidents or nobody that could stop their car going down the road from the bottom of the Minturn Mile when they went to pick up their friend on a slippery day. And I don't think anyone's ever been hurt or hit or whatever, and, you know, so I don't know, you know, I do understand the need for some flexibility on projects of this size. And, you know, I think number one, I would suggest showing us maybe what some alternatives might be. You know, if we vote one way and we're staunchly strict about the code, whether it's Eagle County code or Town of Minturn road code or whatever it is that we're applying, I think that it would be helpful to look at it from a couple different angles versus just what's on the page in front of us today and what the repercussions are of, you know, like you said, you know, if you were to modify this plan, and I'm sure that you and Jeff and the engineers already have some ideas of what could be done and what negative impacts that have on how many units you lose, et cetera. But I would suggest maybe showing us that maybe. And then also, I think just having those points of reference, whether it's going out and taking a photo of that stretch of road and saying, this is an 11% road, or here's a picture of another, you know, some common thing that we're all familiar with, so that we can have a reference point of what 6% feels like, or 8% feels like, or 11% feels like, to give some context, because I think it's important, you know, otherwise I think it's easier for somebody to just go, well, you know, it doesn't fit the code, so it's a no. And I don't think that's necessarily the best way to approach it. So I get, is there anything else besides the grades on those roads? I mean, whether or not we consider the spur road a driveway or not, I feel like that might be an easier one to overcome, especially in the instance of if it's a private road that's not maintained by the town, maybe that's a plus for you.
Yeah.
And maybe there's some other, I don't like to get in life in general. I think it's important these days to not get caught up in call it, you know, what you call something or the name for something. It's what is it being used for, or whatever.
Yeah.
So maybe calling it a driveway, or obviously you have to call it something to apply some rule to it, but maybe there's a way that we can kind of have a conversation about that particular road and, you know, work it out so that it, you know, I understand if it's a private driveway, for instance, I know that there are some driveways in town that I know one in particular in town that's pretty long, and it's probably, it probably adheres to county standards, but county driveway standards are different than county road standards. So as far as one question I had for you was, you know, back, if my memory serves me, back when we saw this as a concept plan, you know, I think that one of the things that came up was that this whole area was always intended to be, or maybe your initial vision of this was always intended to be, an extension of town, you know, as in, it's not a plan, you know, it's a planned community, but it's not necessarily Singletree or Homestead, or it's just an extension of downtown. It's an extension of Hollywood Heights. It's an extension of Taylor Street. So, you know, one of the things that concerned me initially when I started reading about this was I wasn't aware until this packet came out that, you know, that there was HOAs being proposed and sub HOAs being proposed. And, you know, as much as you don't want it to become a homogenized development, it starts to feel to me like it's becoming a little bit of a homogenized development from the standpoint of you know, you're going to have your own DRB or design review board, and then you've still got to go through the design review of the town. And it kind of feels like a bill being pushed through Congress where there's more fat put on it. And I just wonder, you know, what I understand after reading all of it, that, you know, there are certain parts of the property that are proposed to be dedicated back to the town, and the town's kind of said, nope, we don't want those, when we don't want to take care of them, and we don't want the maintenance of them, and the liability of them. So it's obviously there's some common areas that are sort of on the table to remain as a part of the development and not part of the town that would need that level of management for as a sub HOA. But, you know, I just get a little concerned, you know, when it starts to become so overbearing with what kind of a house you can build and what color it can be. And I appreciate your design, you know, and your professional talents for design. And I'm sure that the design guidelines are going to be awesome, but I just sort of questioned that part of it.
Yeah. And you're exactly right. I mean, when I started this, the only private land that I wanted to have in here essentially was the lots, you know, so that we would come through, we would do all the improvements, and then it would get dedicated to the town. The town has brought up concerns, some valid concerns about some of the areas, and not wanting to maintain them, and the liability. We're working through that right now, but it seemed, you know, in the big picture that having the HOA was going to end up being inevitable. It's not, you know, we're not looking at it as being any major HOA by any stretch, but just knowing that that this part of town is going to have to take care of some of the items, you know, the rock fall prevention, the maintenance on that, and a couple other things, just, you know, that we're going to have to be a part of it. The design guidelines, I tried to keep the design guidelines not very restrictive, but just focused on some keying in some design elements that I think are important. Part of the HOA, and I understand what you're saying. I'm trying not to overregulate this, but there are standards that we're having to meet where we're kind of getting pulled into some of these things.
Okay.
And Madam Chair, if I may, just to explain the HOA concerns and kind of the purpose.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's something that we have specifically been requesting because of the significant amount of infrastructure relating to roads, and also the rockfall mitigation that, you know, from the town's perspective is going to become a significant financial burden. You know, we look at residential development, and it's generally the philosophy of the town that residential development needs to pay its way. And this is one of those, this type of infrastructure, the rockfall mitigation, and the maintenance of roads that don't necessarily serve a huge number of parcels, are the type of infrastructure that can be managed by an HOA or a sub HOA. And we're working with Minturn North's attorneys to figure out kind of the final formation of that. And they've been very receptive to our suggestions. But just to, I think affirm what the town's position is, and it really does come down to what the town is able to afford to maintain when new infrastructure comes in. So thank you.
Thank you, Richard. Jeff, do you still have anything?
Yeah, thank you, Richard. I totally understand. I think it's obviously when you go into these larger developments like this, and the developer has a vision, and sometimes that vision you get woken up a little bit with some realities of what you have to have. One question, Greg, that you don't have to answer it now, but if you look, I worked years ago on some projects out in Eastvale on some private homes that are also in Rockfall, and the homes themselves were engineered specifically to withstand avalanches and rockfall, and they were obviously very expensive. They had some very expensive components built into their lot in their home to protect them from those kinds of things. So I just wonder if that avenue has been explored. Obviously, these estate lots down in that end of town are going to be the most expensive lots, and maybe those people can afford the freight on some of that mitigation versus the upfront. You watch what goes on in Georgetown and along the I-70 corridor with Rockfall, and even as you drive into town before you hit the big corner in town, and the amount of mitigation that we've been doing there over the years, it looks like the hillside's going to come down on the road one of these days, and we're not going to be able to get in and out of town. But I just wonder if the engineers, or if any of that's been suggested, to sort of pass that buck down to the homeowner versus how much you're going to be able to mitigate, prior to.
I will look into that. We had the rockfall analysis done. They gave us specifications essentially it was a low risk, and gave us specifications on the length of fence and what it needed to absorb. So the response to that was getting a proposal and having somebody planning to put it in there. But yeah, I'll look into that as an option.
Well, if you look at the rock that's on the train tracks behind the Enclave, that came down from what's left of Lion's Head, I think we're all living in rockfall zone. So
yeah,
the whole town.
It was interesting. They said, and I didn't realize this, the lighter rocks are a much higher hazard than the red rocks, which I didn't know that, but apparently that was the case. We're under that outcropping that is the low concern is outcropping of red rocks. But yeah, no, we are. If you look at look up at the hillside and all the ravine cuts that kind of come down the hillside, it's all over the place.
Yep. So then just my last thing was that the suggestion that was in the report to raise, because of your pre-sales and the amount of pre-sales, like you said, of 90% of the people were from Eagle County. There was a note in that report about a possible suggestion to raise your deed restriction from 20% to 50%. And my thought on that was, how does that work? Let's say if you were to do something like that, how does that work it's in perpetuity, correct? So the second somebody buys that lot and wants to sell that, they build a house, they live in it for a couple of years and they sell it. If you're up at that 50% range versus the 20% that you're starting at, that hinders the second resale of that home, does it not?
Yeah, I mean, it hinders the initial and the second, potentially. I mean, it doesn't have as much of an impact as, say, an affordability component, where there's income restrictions, but there is definitely an impact. If you've got one lot that has a locals restriction on it and then a lot next to it that doesn't, there's a value to it.
All right, well, I do think that you are in the right, you're going in the right direction. And I do think that, like I said, I think those 100+ questions are going to get answered, hopefully sooner than later. I guess it's difficult, Scott, obviously tonight. The question I have for Scott is like, if we deny this per your recommendation tonight, I would assume that carries, does that mean that, that sets some things in motion? Does that make more work for Greg? If we continue it, does that afford him, we want to do the right thing. And obviously, Scott's hands sound like they were a little more tied because of how many questions there are out there, that he either can say recommend approval with conditions or he can recommend denial, but I don't think he can recommend tabling it. So I think the tabling it is on us and the continuance is on us. And so if we make a motion tonight to continue this, which would be my suggestion, how long can we continue it for legally before we have to revisit it? And how much, I want to give you as much time, Greg, as you need, but by the same token, I don't want to push it off so far that it's, I want to find the happy balance of what works for you and works for us.
Richard, is that something you can help us with?
I think Scott and I can answer that together. Scott, well, so if a denial recommendation is made by the commission, then that recommendation would go with the application as it currently is, which it would go as the application has been submitted to town council with the recommendation for denial. The way the process works is there should not be substantive changes to the application between planning commission and town council. And so that is, part of the reason that the denial recommendation was made, because more substantive changes appear to be in the works. Scott, I don't know if you have the continuance provision at your fingertips. I'm scanning through it right now.
I don't, but I could.
You can find it very quickly for you.
Okay. And Jeff, I think you stated the obvious. Hands are tied a little bit.
Yeah.
If you read my staff memo, it's pretty clear that there's been a lot of work put into this, and I do feel that there's a lot of support. There certainly was at conceptual. I still think I won't speak for all the staff involved. There are significant issues that we need to deal with, and issues of road design and things like that are really critical. Thinking about what exists today and whether it works and whether there's been traffic accidents is one thing, but we're dealing with a new set of standards that didn't exist 20, 30, 100 years ago, whatever it is. So we do have to resolve those issues, and what we've asked for and what we can do going forward, which I think is, leans towards why it would make sense to continue this, is that we've asked for, and this is normal to anybody asking for a variation through a PUD process, justification. So pointing to performance-based standards that either work in Eagle County, you kind of mentioned, are there examples elsewhere? Those are some of the things that I think we need to kind of, we still are looking for. And so, my staff report was pretty specific to make, I kind of felt like I went out of my way to say, there are things that, if you look at this objectively, this proposal, there's things that we can find conformance on. And there's aspects of this plan that are, going in the right direction, have been in the right direction, speak to the community plan, all the things that we've talked about and that Greg presented, we got to pay attention to those too. So You know me, I'm going to find a politically correct way of saying what I need to say. There's benefit to the Planning Commission continuing this file and continuing or allowing staff to continue to work with the applicant to resolve these and come back with some of those answers. So we can really, if there are, again, if we can boil this down to a handful of issues, because no offense, Greg, I don't really agree with your assessment that you've addressed most of the 100 things. We have a response from you that says you've addressed it, but we don't feel that some of those things actually have been addressed. And again, I've tried to kind of separate out some of the minor issues, stylistic things with the PUD guide, or if there's, if I'm hoping that there's more meat on the bones or details with regard to some of the sustainability aspects that could be either regulated or encouraged in the PUD, that's one group of issues. And then there's another substantive group of issues that we really need to get a handle on. I think we can get there. And so, Jeff, does that answer your question? And Richard, did I say too much?
Yeah, that's just a question. I just want to know specifically tonight, if we make a motion to continue it, I would assume that the responsibility is on us to set a date, it sounded like is what I heard.
Yes, it's section 1615-160, subsection 2, Planning Commission may continue the public hearing to receive additional information for up to 90 days to a fixed date, time, and place. An applicant shall have the right to request and be granted one continuance. All subsequent continuances shall be granted at the discretion of the Planning Commission upon good cause shown.
So okay.
I read that to mean that the Planning Commission can do it on its own motion, or the applicant can request it.
Okay, thank you, Richard.
And just for those of you out there in the public who may be listening, even though Tom Priest has joined the meeting, he has not been sworn in yet, so we will not be taking comment from him this evening. However, Tom, thank you for joining in, and we look forward to having you on commission. I agree with Jeff, and I agree with Chris that I would like to see some of the issues ironed out before I go any further. I've done a lot of the reading on this, not all of it, but a lot. And I see some of the same things like on the HOA, et cetera. But I have one question, Greg, and I'm not really knowledgeable on this too much, but I do know about it. And that is, in Colorado, we have issues with radon. Does that develop after a house is built, or is that something you check the land before?
It's you would check it beforehand. It occurs all around. It's ongoing. So the issue with construction is that the building, which is strange, and it's not strange, but as homes have become more efficient and tighter, it's become a bigger issue. When houses were built and they weren't as, the windows were a little drafty and the doors were a little drafty and the crawl spaces were drafty, it wasn't as much of an issue. It's been more recent where homes have been built more efficient and tighter, where the radon gas that builds up under a slab or in a crawl space of a home can make its way up into the living area. So it's pretty typical now if I'm doing drawings that I'll call out either a radon system or a pre-wire for a system to be put in if it's found there.
And it's just a mitigation process, correct?
Yeah. You're essentially, if you've got, it is. I mean, if you've got a slab on grade with drainage pipes under it that go to a sump pump, it's kind of capturing it in that area and venting it out. If it's a crawl space, it may be putting like an encapsulation down on the ground with ventilation, essentially to capture those gases and get them away from the living area of the house.
So have any of these studies been involved with looking for that on that property?
No, I can almost guarantee it's going to be there. It's pretty much all around this region.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anybody else from the commission have anything else to say? Jenna?
How about Elliot?
Who's where?
How about Elliot? Our new
Oh,
member.
yeah.
He recused himself.
Oh, sorry.
I was just going to say, when I first moved to Minturn, it was actually a shock to not be a part of an HOA. And I say that because the Bluffs is where I came from, and it's where I had my house, where I sold my house, where I built my house. And then it was those were town streets with HOA management, extension of the downtown. I don't think this is any different, really, than how the Bluffs were treated. The HOA managed the open space, the playgrounds, managed the infractions that they had about, people parking on their lawns and or, fire pits and things like that. It functioned fine. I was on the HOA. I just wanted to throw that out there that this is not a reinvention or anything that different. However, it may be more unique to Minturn, which is largely a non-HOA environment. But I agree. I think that, I'm gonna side with staff as far as management of this application. If Scott seems pretty convinced that there's a lot of things they can work out. I also know that the railroad doesn't seem to work fast, and correct me if I'm wrong. And anytime there's back and forth negotiations, it just takes time. And so I'm not going to suggest or support like a continuance to the next hearing date or even in 30 days. I think you're really going to need that time to bring all these things to some closure so that we can, be able to, as Planning Commission, recommend an approval with conditions. And having 120 some conditions is you got to look at it going, is who's going to manage? That's a lot of follow. It's a lot of work. Does it pencil out type of thing for how you make sure everything keeps going? It's like having an application that's still, alive, so to speak, even though it's actually had closure in as far as approvals go. So I really think that consideration of it's going to take some time probably to resolve these. And then that's all I have for now. And I've been writing down some dates about 30 days out, 60 days out. The last 90 day is actually a Planning Commission hearing. It's July 14th, just so you're aware. That is the 90th day. So you've got a lot of options in between there.
Jeff, do you have anything else? Oh, sorry, Greg.
No, is it okay if I speak to that?
Yes.
To Jenna's points. So you're right. The working with the railroad is not the fastest process in the world. It took us a year to get the contract finalized. We are, having said that, we have been in constant communication with them. It does seem like a solution to the access issue is impending, like that should actually be happening very soon, which is good. The 122 conditions, there are a large number of that are resolved and are being resolved. So while the number is daunting, I think 26 of those were some recommendations and changes to the HOA that are being done. So there are a lot of items on there that are getting done. So while it seems like a very large number, that one doesn't concern me. As I had said, it was those handful of issues that Jeff had alluded to, wanting to see some examples of, and what if we did what the town said that we needed to do, what would the impact be? Those are the ones. And part of why I kind of put my neck on the line with this meeting was much to the chagrin of staff, and I'm sorry for dragging staff through this to some extent, is going from a concept level, which is very kind of touchy-feely, nice, people throw out a lot of ideas, to a 90% construction document without having the benefit of discussing the project with the Planning Commission is very scary. The amount of money that goes into the investment of that package. Minturn has the benefit that they've got a wonderful staff, and a very knowledgeable staff that has been able to give us direction on a huge amount of items. But when it comes to their, items that have a very big impact on the overall plan, it's very difficult from the developer side to invest all of that money to get the plan to that level, knowing that there's a very good chance that we could get into a public meeting and then all of a sudden all that money is just completely wasted and time is wasted. So, I don't know that that's anybody's fault. It's just the nature of the process. I think, in the future, not related to this, I'll probably see if there's a way to amend that, to make some sort of intermediate hearing as well, to allow for, a 40 to 50% review. That's not the case here. We're working with what we have. Again, the staff has been very patient and has provided a lot of good guidance. It was that item right around Fifth that has a pretty big impact on our overall plan that I was hoping to get some level of resolution to, so we could just kind of push forward and get everything buttoned up.
Jeff, do you have anything else? Thank you, Greg.
Thank you.
No, I don't think so, Madam Chair. I just to kind of make sure that we're on the same page with what Jenna just said. Jenna, it sounds like you think that the 90 days isn't going to be enough, potentially.
No, I would rather go on the longer side of the time frame than the shorter side. But to your point, Greg, I'm working with Gunnison County, and what they do is they actually have part of the process is a work session before they go into hearing, specifically to attack what you're talking about. No, to answer your question, Jeff, it's really more like, I think 30 days. I mean, this is what I do for a living as well. And man, you blink and 30 days goes by in a heartbeat, just trying to get answers back from a consultant. And then there's the back and forth and how, the negotiation. I would be probably recommending something in the 60-day range, just to get a lot of these things buttoned down. And I understand what you're saying, Greg. There's a lot of little things that come up that are kind of conditions, but I agree with you that those little things aren't as important. They're just more technical and things like that when you're at, declarations and stuff. But that being said, I've also experienced when I worked in government, man, 3 pages of conditions is a lot, and that might only be 25. It's still a lot. And the nature of those conditions, what does it mean? Can they actually be conditioned? That's something only staff can deal with. And it sounds like Jeff was Spinell was pretty passionate about these roads. I think there's going to be some time that you're going to need to figure that out. So I'm thinking more in the 60-day range to continue.
Let's just say, if we said that if we put it all the way out to July 14th or whatever that date was, the 90-day, and they get their ducks in a row before that, does that mean that they have to wait until then? Or does that mean that if a whole bunch of stuff happened in 60 days, could they get on the agenda?
Good question.
Scott?
Well, if you continue to a date certain, that essentially functions as public notice.
Okay.
We're not going to renote. I mean, actually, we are going to renotice because we have to, because the preliminary plat. But I think that would be hard to. You can't back into a date sooner.
All
Does
right.
that make sense?
Yep. So then
the other option is to, if 60 days isn't enough, you go to that hearing and you request another tabling and you move it to the next hearing or whatever you do. You can always kind of move it further out, I guess. Richard, would you agree with that?
Yeah, that would be my preference, is that you could continue it without it without, I mean, you'd reopen the hearing and then just continue it again.
So we do have the ability, Richard, at that time to, as a board, make the decision to continue it a number of times if we want to.
Yes, it's just the applicant has one request.
Okay, and then just explain real quick, just so I understand, if we denied it tonight and the recommendation then would go to the town council for denial, and let's say they passed it as a denial, then is it back to square one for the applicant?
They are welcome to submit a new application.
Right.
Is there a 1-year time between applications?
I do not recall, but
It's kind of typical of most codes. If you get a denial, you can't come back for a year kind of stuff. I just don't know if our code does that.
Okay, I don't think we're going down that road, so.
Would I assume if you have to reapply, you would have to reapply and pay all the fees too?
Yes.
yes.
In this case, a lot of the work would be done, so they wouldn't be paying twice. But if there's something that, if we're at a stalemate, I'm not sure, they probably wouldn't come back, I would assume, because it's just too difficult and cost prohibitive. So it's better for them to continue, I would also assume, putting my feet into their shoes. But
The only other thing I would like to say is that there are a couple of projects in the past town that we still get negativity on. Who knows why, what happened, etc. If it got passed too fast. But I'd like not to see that happen with this. I think this is a good project for this town. And if we take the time to do it right, we shouldn't have to deal with that, nor should Greg. So
right.
That was just one thing I want to say. Chris, I'm sorry, I didn't give you the option. Do you have anything else?
Sorry,
Chris?
I keep throwing popcorn. Nope, no, I don't.
He's watching the show.
Yeah, it's a movie.
Greg, is there anything less you want to say before we go to motion?
No, I mean, I obviously would appreciate the continuance. And, as far as timing, if we had the ability to set it at 60 days, that seems like that should be more than enough for us to get what we need done, get a lot of these things knocked out, and have it to staff with enough time to be able to review and work through items. I can't say that we'll be 100%, but I certainly think we're going to be to a point where we be in a spot where we could everybody would be comfortable with a recommendation for approval with maybe a couple of conditions. And I think that that's probably the best scenario.
I wholeheartedly agree with Lynn. We want to have, because we like the project as far as conceptually from the, when you first came in, and we see the benefit of what's happening here. But we want to make sure that, everyone's feeling pretty good whatever we end up with as far as approval and how many conditions and so forth, and staff has to be happy. And all right, if you're thinking about, go ahead.
I was just saying, if I could do everything, put it in a banker's box and drop it on the desk the day before the hearing, I would definitely be pushing for less time. But I'm pretty sure that would get me shot. Right.
60-ish days is June 9th, or June 23rd is a little bit on the other side of 60. So a little bit before, a little bit after.
June 23rd, I guess the thing, and if we look at 60 days, I think we have to back up from that date 2.5 weeks for us to have gotten the last piece of information or something like that, or so we can analyze it and write a report on it and all that stuff. But the interim period, I think, again, I have 2 staff reports, the one you got tonight and the one that we were working on that's more detailed. So we're not going to be starting from scratch. We can start filling in those holes of issues. And, I see this as workable, is what I'm saying.
So the
June
23rd?
Correct.
Yeah, preferably.
So with that, would somebody like to make a motion for the evening?
I make a motion to continue the Minturn North PUD application and associated files to June 23rd,
May I have
2020.
a motion by Jenna, second by Jeff? Jenna? We're going to take a
Yes,
roll
aye.
call vote on this.
Oh, good. Yes, aye.
Jeff?
Aye.
Chris?
Aye.
Lynn? Aye. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Greg.
Thank you, everybody,
Yeah.
for your time.
Thanks,
I know
Greg.
this is a big project and a lot of time goes into it. And thank you, Scott. Thanks, staff, for all the work you guys have done. Really appreciate it.
Absolutely, Greg.
We'll get it dialed in.
Yes, we will.
Thank you.
Very good. Thanks, Greg.
Madam Chair, what's your pleasure? Would you like to take a short break? I can
Yes.
pull up the agenda and we'll.
I was just going to ask that. I don't know how long we only have a few things, but could we take a short 5-minute break, please? Thank you.
Okay. How you feeling? Oh, wow.
I had no idea my phone was not.
We're taking a short break, but we're almost done.
So mom called because Lauren called her the second.
Lynn, are you at the town? You're on mute. I'm trying to read your lips.
She said sorry.
You can read those lips, sorry.
My grandmother was actually, she went deaf when she was 17 and she never learned sign language. So she was a lip reader.
Oh,
But
wow.
sometimes when,
Oh, wow.
when she talked, she would like, if she laughed, she'd be like, so sometimes she didn't really understand that she wasn't projecting any sound.
Yeah.
So you ended up reading her lips to be able to understand her in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So yeah. I wish she had learned sign language, but.
Madison,
Yes, ma'am.
my screen says, please move this window away from shared application.
That is on Scott's screen.
Oh, okay.
Always my fault. It is on my screen.
What
Why
I
is
said
that?
to you, Chris, is yes, I'm
I
a
don't know.
dinosaur. So I am at the town at a computer here.
Oh, that works out. You know, I'm wondering, has there been any talk of when we, because I have a feeling everyone on the P&Z probably has got a shot, or no? I've got mine.
I
Okay,
just got my second today.
have we restarted the
Oh, so
meeting?
did Chris.
I just got my.
Not yet.
and
We're just
we-
talking.
What's that, Madison?
I was
Yeah,
asking
just
if we had restarted the
meeting.
meeting.
We had not.
Oh.
We had not. I just gave Chris the thermometer and some Tylenol because he had his today. We'll see what happens.
Second shot's a
His
tough
second
one.
shot.
Okay, so let's return to the meeting so we can wrap it up for the evening. Project updates, Chapter 16 zoning code amendments. Scott?
Madam Chair, thank you. So Madison, Richard, and I have been working diligently as we could when we're not working on trying to get ready for this hearing to bring forth a draft ordinance of some, but not all of the changes we've talked about with regard to Chapter 16. So at the next hearing, we are hoping to present a draft ordinance for your consideration. So that's coming your way.
And then planning director report, minor DRB approval by Director Belden Place preliminary plan application status.
No
Oh,
minor
lots.
DRB application approvals to speak of, but I believe we have just received the updated Belden Place preliminary plan application responding to referral comments. I think we got that today or yesterday,
This morning.
So no rest for the weary. We're going to start going through that. And I think the initial report is that it looks like it's organized and it's going to be easy for staff to go through and understand what the revisions have been and what the responses to referral comments have been. So we will go through that. I'm not sure exactly how long that's going to take us. But if we get through that and determine that the requested revisions and updates and all that stuff have been made, then we'll start looking at scheduling a hearing, putting out public notice, and starting that process.
Okay. Is there anything else out there anybody else has to say this evening? No, no.
Just real quick, the Dow Junction real estate competition that we're excited to see. The first round of elimination happens tomorrow and Friday. So assuming I'm not belly up on the couch because of my COVID shot, I think I'll be participating or at least, viewing that. So there's going to be actual judges engaged, and then it'll whittle the number of teams down, and then that'll move forward to the next round, I think in late April or May.
Is that, are they broadcasting that?
Madison,
Or
do you
just the
know if
finals?
they-
I have not been involved in this project at all. I do not know. I can certainly ask Michelle and let y'all know, but that is not something that I have the answer to.
I'd love to
they
see the
do.
finals. I'd like to see the finals for sure.
Yeah, should be
Well,
exciting.
okay, cool.
Yeah.
Keep us posted.
And how are you feeling, Scott?
I feel fine, but I only had my shot like 4 hours ago or 5 hours ago.
Ah,
Mine kicked in at 12.
Sorry, Scott, just wait.
Great.
I woke up at 3:30 in the morning going, I think I have the chills. Give me
Just
some
have Tylenol ready.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go to bed with the thermometer, Tylenol, water. You'll be
Good
fine.
advice.
Okay, with that, may I have a motion to adjourn this evening's meeting? I think we did a great job. Thank you, everybody.
You did do a great
Thank
job.
you.
Thanks, everybody.
I
I
make a
move that we
motion.
adjourn.
Nope,
Oh,
you
go
go
ahead,
ahead,
Chris.
Jenna.
Oh, after you.
Oh, please.
Somebody make a motion.
Okay. I move that we adjourn tonight's meeting, that being of April 14th, 2021.
May I have a second?
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Good night.
All right.
Thank
Good
you.
night,
Good night,
everybody.
everybody.
Good night, Elliot.
Hey, thanks, everybody.